So I would start by telling me a little about your role as Chief Strategy Officer. Like, what does that entail? Is that media? Is that creative? Somewhere in the middle?
My role is, Initiative is a media agency. So my role is to understand our consumers who are using the client's products, why they're using the product, and then how to connect them with the brand through media. So really understanding, and through the broadest range of channels. So media, traditional, digital, anything that you can create, anything like that.
Okay. So having formerly been in an agency, I'm wondering if you're getting CMOs or clients that are coming to your office and saying, so I want a native ad campaign. Are we there yet? Like, isn't now a buzzword that sort of you've got brand marketers coming to you asking for it by name, or is it a path that you lay out some crumbs and you get them to?
Yeah, I think that probably they don't come to us and ask us for a native advertising campaign.
Branded content?
I think that probably it's changing. I think that probably throughout this past year, it's no longer considered kind of a tactic. So I think people did think like, oh, we need to have a branded video campaign, let's do that. I think that now clients want to tell brand stories, and they're much more open to having us help them figure out what are the right ways to do that. And branded video might be one of those elements.
So how does, sort of going back to a comment that Rory made earlier, one of the things that I would love to really understand is what's the Venn diagram, right? Because native advertising is really about adjacency and having a relevant story to tell by a brand as part of a publisher's sort of overall content offering, right? And then brand content is, quite often either storytelling just holistically that is not necessary, that is sort of publisher agnostic, right? Should be meaningful and relevant content regardless of the channel or the partner with whom it's distributed. How do they fit together in the process of developing that plan of action for brand and what that media plan and that story, that creative brief is?
I think that the best examples are when a client completely knows who their consumer is, knows what's relevant to them, and they have a very clear sense of who their brand is. And then where they choose to tell that story and where they choose to kind of place their advertising becomes so natural. I think the Venn diagram is consumer and brand, and then relevance comes out in the middle, and then how you choose to kind of distribute that is up to.
Well, the reason I asked the cadence is because, my background is traditionally media buying, right? So part of the media sales process was a publisher coming in, pitching a branded content offering that typically involved a branded content but was native in nature, right? Because it was specific to their editorial content and extension of that. And I think that's one of the reasons the advertorial and what it means for video is something with which I think we're struggling as an industry. Do you think the brands have a good sense of it? Like, do your clients have a good sense of how they want to work with publishers to make their brand story more relevant?
I think that is something that we're working on and developing. I think that the notion of, again, being very clear of who your consumer is and very clear of who the brand is, and then being able to very clearly articulate that to publishers and media partners is key to that. And then being able to provide great feedback to publishers when they come back to something, because I think so many times we hear media partners come to us and we're like, it just didn't work.
Right.
But being able to have a dialogue. And another thing is we choose strategic partners. So not every single publisher that we work with is going to get the same brief from us. There are key, because again, based on our brand, based on the consumer, there are key partners that we know are the ones that we can have much more engaged and kind of long-term dialogues with.
So what I'm hearing is sort of ground zero is force the brand and your client teams to really own the brand voice, understand it, and then understand how storytelling is an extension of the brand, right?
Absolutely.
How's that talk go when you're like, so your brand story's not really interesting? How's that typically work out? Like, and
all of our clients have very interesting stories.
I do not doubt or second guess that. Perhaps just we've already told it, so let's not tell it again, right?
I think that there are times when maybe the brand story isn't so interesting, but again, in that case, if you have a very clear sense of who your consumer is and what they want to hear, then sometimes you can partner with publishers or media partners who have stories that are interesting, and you can kind of maybe borrow a little bit of interest from your media partners or from other brands or something like that.
So tell me a little about some of the things you've done with clients that have worked that you're proud of and kind of you think are a good example of executing to a strong brand story, but actually leveraging both activation and creative in such a way that you drove the greatest value for a brand.
Yeah, I think I have two examples that I think show two different sides to the same coin. So I think in one case, you can pick a strategic partner and then you can figure out what content you should produce as a result of that partnership. And then in another case, I think brands decide what platform they need to have, and then they put together the partners that'll help tell that story best. So The first is a partnership between Miller Coors and AOL. So chose AOL as a strategic partner and have worked together to create the partnership that we have. It's called the Brewpub Newsroom. And so a big part of it is basically being able to create content that we know is relevant for the guys 21 to 34 of legal drinking age. And we're able to, some of it is video content, some of it is editorial. Kind of have 3 newsroom staffers that work at AOL that are helping kind of look at Twitter, see what's trending. And the best part of it is that 50% of it is based on a brand calendar, so what the stories that the brand wants to tell. But the other 50% of it is based on kind of what's current, what's relevant, what's trending.
So that's sort of a hybrid between sponsored content and branded content, it sounds like. Okay, and I'm just curious, I mean, with the age gating, right, how are you seeding that content so you're creating enough interest and desire that it's willing to go through the hoop of getting past the age gate?
So we've created something called Huff Bros Live,
Got it.
where we're making sure that the people that we're speaking to are 21 to 34 in a panel. It's kind of in a live setting.
Got it.
And then we're pushing it out, and it has been, the legal components of it are kind of the parts that are the most.
But I'm assuming that the reason I asked is because it sounds like this is a great example of you guys were so thoughtful, where the sponsored content part of it is something that is not necessarily directly touched by the brand, and you can allow that to kind of be something that brings folks in, and it's kind of more a holistic proposition, right?
Absolutely. That was the intent. So it needed to be equally brand specific, but also blow out kind of the relevance to a broader group of people.
Yeah. That's great. Because we often, it's interesting, right, when we talk about brand content, we typically don't talk about sponsored content in the same vein because we sort of look at them very differently. And typically sponsored content is a 100% pure play media activation. So they're sort of church and state. Tell me about the second.
The second is for 7-Up. It was kind of, 7-Up is kind of relaunching. It's a very substitutable category, and it was really trying to figure out how we could reestablish ourselves. And electronic dance music became the platform. You know, 7-Up is all about up moments and things like that, and we didn't want to be small, and music is something that is part of every up moment, and so electronic dance music became kind of the platform that we were around, and then it became about cherry picking, whether it was festivals or media partners that could really kind of help us get that word out. So we became the sponsor of the live stream of the EDC in Las Vegas, and then we're able to create lots of content around like on-site activation and things like that, and in a relevant way. Kind of music was what we wanted to do, and then we pieced together all of the partners that would help us kind of get that branded content and push it out.
Got it. Okay. And I mean, are both of these so is the Miller Coors one ongoing? Like what was that? You said it's sort of based on a product calendar, right?
It's a year-long partnership to start with. That's that we have done, and the Dr. Pepper campaign is currently running, and it's had a great impact on sales, and it will run again through this year, and we'll evaluate it as we go into planning for next year.
So that was actually my next question. Okay, so 7-Up is really looking at sort of sales attribution as their measure of success, and Miller Coors, are these branding initiatives? Are these more performance-based initiatives? Is it attribution? Like, what is driving their evaluation at the end as to whether or not this was a successful campaign?
A big part of the AOL partnership is branding studies to understand kind of what elements of attributes have increased. Clearly, we'll also be looking at sales, so we have a data stack that allows us to see what pieces of content people are interacting with, and then see kind of at the end what types of actions people are taking.